Well, thank you, Sophia, and thank you for the entire NAMI team to letting me come talk to the youth symposium today. Um, so I'm Senator Anthony Portantino. I represent the 25th State Senate District, which starts in Sunland, Tujunga, goes all the way to Upland, so about 18 communities along the 210 freeway. Um, I think of myself as a legislator second and a dad first. And so I use the lens of a dad as sort of how I prioritize my agenda. I do a lot on in education and obviously on mental health issues as well. And so I'm very pleased to be partnering with NAMI this year on SB 224, which is to create a curriculum for students to learn about mental health. They would be taking one class in elementary school, one class in middle school, and one class in high school, and we would create an age-appropriate curriculum. And so that's a bill working through the process this year. I came to the mental health space, I think, like a lot of people, through personal contact. Um, my older brother about a decade ago took his own life. And, when we have 1 in 5 California youth facing some sort of mental health issue, um, these issues are personal to all of us. And what I learned through that process was the mental health process, as my brother was in and out of 3 different county hospitals during the last year of his life. And B, once he took his own life, the number of people who I would routinely see around town who never spoke to me about mental health issues. Once I joined the club as a survivor, once I was part of that inside group, the club that you never want to be part of, people were comfortable coming up and talking to me, telling me about their brother, their aunt, their nephew, their son, their daughter, who were struggling with mental health, some who, lost that struggle, some who conquered that struggle. But it wasn't until I was part of the group that people felt comfortable. And it made me really think and process, why is it when we go to a dinner party, we can talk about our cholesterol, we can talk about our waistline, we can talk about a sprained ankle that we had on the tennis court, but we don't talk about uh, depression. We don't talk about mental health the same way that we talk about physical health. And so one of my goals is to have mental health and physical health treated the same, and to bring this subject out of the shadows, which is why I talk about it. And I'm happy to be here to share, my brother's perspective and what I learned through that process. And so that's how I started to gravitate towards mental health awareness issues and legislation. First, I changed the state law on notice requirements when somebody is inside a hospital and there's hearings to make sure that family members are informed, because as my brother went through the system, he got better at gaming the system. And one of the things he did is he kept those hearings away from me, and so I couldn't protest his release. And I knew he wasn't ready to be out, and lo and behold, he was let out and unfortunately took his own life. And so I learned from that where I can help. Obviously, partnering with NAMI this year on legislation to help educate young people is critical. As you all know, the young people on this Zoom call, peer-to-peer interactions sometimes are more important than even interactions with your own family members. And so I know through my own children, I always tell the story how my oldest daughter bought a Mazda 6 because the guy that she was a barista at the Starbucks told her, you got to buy a Mazda 6. So it didn't matter what dad said. The only thing that mattered is what the fellow barista told her about which car to buy. And so we all know that this peer-to-peer relationship is critical. And so that's why this bill is so important, is because if we can educate young people through their academic K-12 experience, they'll be in a position to help their peers. They're going to be in a position to recognize the issues within themselves. And if we can do that, we can get somebody the help they need. Another issue that's important to me is making sure that school personnel are trained in seeing the warning signs of mental health. We had a father testify 2 weeks ago. A 14-year-old daughter turned in her journal to her teacher and got an A on the journal, but the teacher wasn't trained to see the warning signs on mental health issues within that journal. And a couple weeks after the girl turned in her journal, she took her own life. Now, the father didn't blame the teacher because the teacher wasn't trained. So the more we know, the more we confront, the more we recognize, the more we partner, the more we bring this issue out of the shadows, I think we can get the care to folks who need it. Another thing that's of critical importance to me this year is making sure, again, that mental health and physical health are treated the same way within our academic environment. There's a flaw in education code where if you're home because you have a cold, that's an approved absence. And if you're home because you have depression, that's not necessarily treated as an approved absence. So talk about destigmatizing mental health and then having a situation where you don't even know if you're staying home from school is going to be treated as approved. And I was doing an editorial board on that subject, and one of the editors said to me, well, what happens if the parent or the child lie and say that they had depression? I said, well, you don't ask that question when somebody sends a note in saying the child had a cold. Why would you assume that they might lie because it's a mental health issue? I said, the fact that you asked that question is the reason why we have the bill, because you would automatically subscribe something to the mental health issue that you wouldn't subscribe to the physical health issue. I said, that underscores why we're doing that. And so that's why I'm passionate about these issues. We put the suicide prevention hotline number on all student IDs between 7th grade and through college. And, frankly, 99% of our students aren't going to need that number. But by putting that on the card versus the high school football schedule, it stimulated conversations. I can't tell you how many parents have come up to me and said, hey, my 16-year-old came home and said, talk to me about this new student ID. Again, it's an effort to bring this subject out of the shadows and destigmatize mental health issues. And so that's why I'm passionate about these issues. That's why I'm here today. Obviously, we have a situation where people between 1 and 12th grade don't receive the mental health education that they should, don't receive the training that they should, the understanding that they should. And so anything I can do to partner with NAMI on getting the word out and changing public policy, I'm all for. And so that's a little bit about me. Like I said, I have 2 daughters, a 19 and a 29-year-old, and I learn from them every day. Much to their displeasure, I ask a lot of questions, but that's my job. I tell them that the only thing I do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is be a dad. And every now and then I have to remind them to just let me be a dad. And so as a legislator and talking to young people, it helps me be a dad as well. So you're also providing me an opportunity to heal and be whole as a dad. So I know I want to see if anybody has any questions out there. But that's a little bit about, why I'm doing the bill. And again, NAMI is a great partner. And I hope the young people out there, will embrace this idea of actually having it be part of your curriculum to take 3 courses in mental health issues. Because the more we know, the better we are to help those around us. And again, peer-to-peer relationships are critical. One last thing before I go to questions, I also moved the school start time back for high school and middle school, because I see clapping, Chris is clapping, because there's 35 years of research that show that when teenagers sleep in the morning, they're healthier, happier, they do better, and frankly, they think about depression and suicidal thoughts a lot less when you sleep. And I would ask all of you, how many hours a day do you sleep? Yeah, believe it or not, if you're a teen, you should be getting about 10 hours of sleep. And most of you probably get about 5. So one of the 2 things you could do to be healthy is get outside and exercise and sleep in the morning. And so that's my last message. And I'm happy to take some questions and share. I'd love to hear some of your perspective as well.
Thank you so much. And what I didn't get a chance to say earlier as we were getting started is how grateful we are to you and your partnership on this bill, and your dedication to student and youth mental health and youth education issues in general. we know that you've been a longtime member and supporter of NAMI, and we're really looking forward to working with you closer on this bill. I have put some information into the chat box for those of you that want additional information on SB 224 that Senator Portantino just highlighted, as well as some additional information on the Senator, his website, as well as his social media, for those of you that want to learn more about the work that he does. And so if you have any questions, if you want to pop anything into the chat box, we have a couple of minutes before we have to go on to our next speaker, but definitely, want to open it up to folks that might have questions or anything that you want to ask right now. So if there's anything, go ahead and pop that in there. I'm going to scroll up and make sure I didn't miss anything here either.
And no pressure.
So there is a question here about if the bill includes evaluation data.
Right now, we're just creating the curriculum and to make sure that it's taught at 3 times during a student's K-12 experience. But yes, obviously, data is always critical to understanding these issues as we drill down. So that gives us more to do.
Absolutely. And I think, from what we heard yesterday and what we, plan to continue in terms of our conversation today, just how much we need to support our young people at all levels. And if the last year has taught us anything, it's that we have to prioritize mental health for our children and youth. And so there's another question here about what the classes might look like, if it's one presentation or one per quarter.
We're working with the department and the agency on creating an age-appropriate curriculum. I don't think we've defined yet, the length of the class. I mean, it's going to be more than one class, obviously, probably a quarter or a semester to really grasp the subject appropriately. And it may be a shorter amount of time in elementary school and progress as it goes through middle school and high school. On what's age appropriate. So we haven't defined that yet to the fullest extent, because obviously we want the experts in the field to be crafting. And I'm a politician. I'm not going to be crafting the curriculum.
Wonderful. And then there's one last question here about if this includes work to provide education to parents and caregivers as well.
I'm sure that would be a topic in the class, but as far as the academic piece, it's really tied to the classroom. But whoever asked the question, it's, the more we educate parents and caregivers, that's critical. The other bill, SB 14, is the one where we're training 50% of all school personnel to understand the warning signs of mental health issues. And so that's a companion bill to this. I think that's appropriate that 50% of everybody who works on a campus should understand the warning signs. They don't have to provide the treatment, obviously, but that story I mentioned about the father and the daughter, that's a real story, where if that teacher had been trained to know the warning signs, we may have been able to get that young girl the care she needed.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, continuing these conversations and looking at the availability of NAMI programs and communities to offer support to parents and caregivers and young people. So there's a lot of potential here. We're really excited for that. I'm going to do one last question here before we move on to our next speaker, and that is if students will be able to provide input on the curriculum as it's developed.
Typically, the curriculum, the group that does it, creates the curriculum, has public comment period, but that's a great point. We really should make it more inclusive of young people's voices. You guys are the experts on yourself. We parents, you don't come with a manual. And I can just tell you, between my 2 daughters a decade apart, they're night and day of each other, and it's, what worked with one doesn't work with the other, and what one likes the other doesn't like. And, it's so you are the experts. And so I will make sure that we make it clear that student voices need to be part of the crafting of the age appropriate curriculum, because oftentimes you guys have better insights than we do. I mean, I'm 60 years old. It was a long time ago when I was a teenager. And there was no cell phones, no internet. We actually had magazines that we looked at and newspapers. You know, we actually touched things, and it was a totally different. Angela's laughing. It was a different world. You know, back when I was a teenager.
No, I was smiling in was in understanding. I have two kids myself, also very different. And I often say, especially in this space, when we talk with our youth and students and our clubs, that I'm someone's mom. And so I really want to help and be supportive, but oftentimes pretty sure I don't always have my finger on the pulse of anything they might want to do. So, so thank you so much for everything, for being here today with us, sharing a little bit about why this work is so important to you, and your commitment to youth and student mental health. We see this partnership as, you know, a wonderful thing for all of us to work together to create a better community and setting for our students and our children. But really just, you know, very, very grateful to have this time with you.